Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Ankita, and as you can tell from the title, today I'll be talking about The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the first book in the Witcher series. I'll try keeping this review as spoiler-free as I possibly can because I truly want you guys to enjoy this book as much as I did. So let's jump right into this. This book is a collection of 6 short stories where we are following the character of Geralt, who is a witcher. His job is to kill monsters. So he kills monsters for a living, and I would call him like a freelance monster killer. The first story is titled The Witcher, and we find out in this how good or bad Geralt is at what he does. So we get a glimpse into his job as a witcher. To be honest, I wasn't impressed after I finished this story because when I picked this book up, I was under the impression that this is going to be my next favorite series. And no, when I finished this first story, I thought this was another one of those series that everyone loves and I detest. So I wasn't impressed. But I kept on going. I read the second story and changed my mind. Before I talk about the second story, I thought it would be a good idea to tell you about some of the magical aspects in this book. I'm sorry I forgot to film this part, hence the screen. Now this book is packed with monstrous beings like Striga. Now I had never come across such monsters in any books. So I had to look them up, and I was surprised to find that they are Slavic mythological creatures. Pretty cool. Also, there are elves in 2 stories. So if you like books with elves, like I myself do, you might enjoy this book. Now, Geralt himself has some supernatural powers, like he can make certain signs in the air. I have to point out that there is absolutely no effort on the author's part to explain the magical system, and world building is next to absent, which did bother me initially, like when I was reading the first few stories. But as I went on, I realized or started getting the hang of the structure of each story, and I didn't expect any explanation, so that made it eventually easier for me to focus on just the plot and Geralt himself. So if you are someone who is bothered by lack of world building, you might find this to be a difficult read and possibly not like it. I would like to point out that these are short stories and not a novel. I think that could explain the lack of world building. There is also no map in this book, which is pretty surprising because there are tons of places mentioned in these short stories. I tried creating a mental map, but it soon turned into scrambled eggs. I would recommend this book to anyone who loves character-driven stories and fairy tales. These stories felt like action-packed version of grim fairy tales. Again, I won't go into too much detail because these are short, wonderful short stories. All I'll say is that the magical, or rather the fairy tale element in the last story made the plot very interesting. The second story is titled A Grain of Truth. I love this story. After I finished this one, I wanted to finish the book in one setting, but I could not, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as to why I wasn't able to finish this book in a day. But in the second story, the author gives us a glimpse into Geralt's humanity. Now this is very important considering he is a killer. Even if he kills monsters, he's still a killer. So this one added a little depth to Geralt's character, which I loved. So in the second story, we find out that Geralt is not some cold-blooded killer. He has certain principles. So in the third story, which is titled The Lesser Evil, his principles are challenged. He is forced to make a choice and his options, both of which are horrible. So you see how interesting the stories are becoming simply because of who Geralt is. And at this point, I'm starting to like the way the author is showing different sides of Geralt. He is now becoming a more complex character. The fourth story is titled A Question of Price. I have to say, so far in the book, this was the story that I loved the best. I enjoyed it the most because it was witty. And in this story, I found Geralt to be more complex person because he says something in this story that made me pause and question, like, who is he? Who is this guy? And I won't say a lot about it because I don't want to give away too much, but this was the one that I enjoyed the most. The fifth story is The Edge of the World. I felt this was more of a setup for what's to come in one of the next books. I haven't read a synopsis of any of the other books, so I cannot say for sure, but I have a strong feeling that some of the characters that appear in this story will appear in one of the books. I hope they do, because that would be fun. One thing I loved about this story was an introduction of a new character who is very talkative, and he perfectly complements Geralt, who is more of a listener, and his speech is laconic. So yeah, he perfectly complements. This talkative character also appears in the last story in this book, which is titled the same as the book title, The Last Wish. It was a page turner. When I finished this book, I was sad. I wanted more and more of Geralt's adventures. Let's talk about the structure of this book. So unusual. Each story begins with a chapter titled The Voice of Reason, where we get a glimpse into his personal relationships. At times I was confused because I'm not sure if all of these, like the Voice of Reason chapters, are in chronological order to the stories that follow. So I was confused, but not to the point where I was annoyed. I was more intrigued. I wanted to know more, especially the last Voice of Reason chapter was absolutely confusing because I don't know what happened in there. Like, I really don't know. So I'll have to read the next book. So it's a good way to end a story, especially when you know that there's a next book available. Overall, I would rate this book a 4.5 because I absolutely loved the character of Geralt. I want to know so much more about him than was revealed through the stories and the Voice of Reason. I definitely want to read the next books. Before I end this video, I do want to make sure that I tell you what I did not like about this book. The translation is not the best. I did struggle with the language. I did struggle. There were times when it took me an hour to read 10 pages. If you have made it so far in the video, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. Also, if you would like me to review any particular book, please let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a good day or a night, depending on where you are, and see you next time.